Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we're studying chapter 2 of Jnana Yoga, and Swami Vivekananda is giving us the chronology of how we came to understand what it is that actually is the motive power for our being being a verb. What is the motive power for our being? And he went through a number of steps, and now he's come to the Atman. Later on, however, we find a higher idea coming, that this bright body, that is the subtle body, that this bright body did not represent the force that propels us. Whatsoever has form must be the result of combinations of particles and requires something else behind it to move it. If this body requires something which is not the body to manipulate it, the bright body, by the same necessity, will also require something other than itself to manipulate it, because the understanding is that the bright body or subtle body is made of subtle particles, that our gross body is made of gross particles. This is all based in the Sankhya philosophy. And this is where the Atman idea comes from. So if there's something that motivates or propels or animates this gross body, then the Swami is saying, by the same token, something other than itself must manipulate the bright or subtle body. So that something that manipulated both the subtle and the gross bodies, so that something was called the soul, in Sanskrit the Atman. It was the Atman which, through the bright body, as it were, worked on the gross body outside. The bright body is considered as the receptacle of the mind, and the Atman is beyond that. It is not the mind even. It works the mind. So let's be very clear about this. The Atman is not the mind, and it is the Atman that has purposes, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, and in doing so works the mind, as the Swami says. The bright body is considered as the receptacle of the mind, and the Atman is beyond that. It is not the mind even. It works the mind, and through the mind, the body, the gross body. You have an Atman, I have another. Each one of us has a separate Atman and a separate fine body, bright body, subtle body, and through that we work on the gross external body. Now this is a remarkable idea. The Atman, each of us that appears on the screen this evening, has a separate Atman. But the Atman, though seems to be separate, or can be spoken of as separate, is not separate from Brahman. Brahman has two, we could say, aspects. The unknowable, unspeakable aspect, Nirguna Brahman, that is the Brahman without any attributes or effects of the gunas, and Saguna Brahman. The Atman is Saguna Brahman, Brahman with the gunas, but it is the master of the gunas. Though each of us has a separate Atman, it is that Atman is one with Ishvara, which is one with Brahman, but Ishvara and the Atman are Saguna Brahman, Brahman with attributes, Brahman with the workings of the gunas. So each of us has an Atman that is working its purposes through the fine body, the subtle body, and the gross body. But there is, as the Swami will go on to point out, no fundamental separation in consciousness, capital C consciousness, between the Atman and Brahman. So each one of us, has a separate Atman and a separate fine or subtle body or bright body, and through that we work on the gross external body. Questions were then asked about this Atman, about its nature. What is this Atman, the soul of man, which is neither the body nor the mind? Great discussions followed, and this is what happened in India over the centuries. Great discussions, many people wrote commentaries and voiced their opinions, some of them from very profound spiritual discernment, and though they did not always come to the same conclusions. Great discussions followed. Speculations were made. Various shades of philosophic inquiry came into existence, and I shall try to place before you some of the conclusions that have been reached about this Atman. Now, the Swami will ultimately give us his own ideas, but this is because all of us who are acquainted with this idea of the Atman, we have these questions about it. So the Swami says, I will try to place before you some of the conclusions that have been reached about this Atman. The different philosophies seem to agree that this Atman, whatever it be, has neither form nor shape, and that which has neither form nor shape must be omnipresent. So there is an aspect of us that is omnipresent. The Atman is omnipresent. Time begins with mind. Space also is in the mind. Causation cannot stand without time. Without the idea of succession, there cannot be any idea of causation. Time, space, and causation, therefore, are in the mind, and as this Atman is beyond the mind and formless, it must be beyond time, beyond space, and beyond causation. Now, if it is beyond time, space, and causation, it must be infinite. So now we have omnipresent and infinite. Then comes the highest speculation in our philosophy. The infinite cannot be two. If the soul be infinite, there can only be one soul, and all ideas of various souls, you having one soul and I having another, and so forth, are not real. The real man, therefore, is one and infinite, the omnipresent spirit. And the apparent man is only a limitation of that real man. I'm going to read that again because this is so very, very critical to our understanding. Time, space, and causation are in the mind. And as the Atman is beyond the mind and formless, it must be beyond time, beyond space, and beyond causation. Now, if it is beyond time, space, and causation, it must be infinite. Then comes the highest speculation in our philosophy. The infinite cannot be two. If the soul be infinite, there can be only one soul, and now it's capitalized S, soul, and all ideas of various souls, you're having one soul and I having another, and so forth, are not real. The real man, therefore, is one and infinite, the omnipresent spirit. And that apparent man is only a limitation of that real man. In that sense, the mythologies are true that the apparent man, however great he may be, is only a dim reflection of the real man who is beyond. The real man, the spirit, being beyond cause and effect, not bound by time and space, must therefore be free. He, that or she, that person, was never bound and could not be bound. The apparent man, the reflection, is limited by time, space, and causation, and is therefore bound. Or in the language of some of our philosophers, he appears to be bound, but really is not. This is the reality in our souls. This is the reality in our souls, this omnipresence, this spiritual nature, this infinity. Every soul is infinite. Therefore, there is no question of birth and death. Some children were being examined. The examiner put them rather hard questions, and among them was this one: why does not the earth fall? He wanted to evoke answers about gravitation. Most of the children could not answer at all. A few answered that it was gravitation or something. One bright little girl answered it by putting another question: why should it fall? The question is nonsense. Why should the earth fall? There is no falling or rising for the earth. In infinite space, there is no up or down. That is only the relative. Where is the coming or going for the infinite? Whence should it come and whither should it go? Thus, when people cease to think of the past or future, they give up the idea of the body because the body comes and goes and is limited. Then they have risen to a higher ideal. The body is not the real man, neither is the mind, for the mind waxes and wanes. It is the spirit beyond, which alone can live forever. The body and mind are continually changing and are, in fact, only names of series of changeful phenomena, like rivers whose waters are in constant state of flux, yet presenting the appearance of unbroken streams. Every particle in the body is constantly changing. No one has the same body for many minutes together, and yet we think of it as the same body. So with the mind, one moment it is happy, another moment unhappy, one moment strong, another weak, and an ever-changing whirlpool. That cannot be the spirit which is infinite. Change can only be in the limited. To say that the infinite changes in any way is absurd. It cannot be. You can move, and I can move as limited bodies. Even every particle in the universe is in a constant state of flux. But taking the universe as a unit, as one whole, it cannot move. It cannot change. Motion is always a relative thing. I move in relation to something else. Any particle in this universe can change in relation to any other particle. But take the whole universe as one, and in relation to what can it move? There is nothing besides it. So this infinite unit is unchangeable, immovable, absolute, and this is the real man. Our reality, therefore, consists in the universal and not in the limited. These are old delusions, however comfortable they are, to think we are little limited beings constantly changing. I'm going to stop there for the moment because we've been offered so much about the Atman and about the gross body, the subtle body, the mind, the spirit, and so on. Let's not go on before we resolve any questions or doubts that any of you have. This is where we do this together. And it's very important that you bring to the fore anything that is unresolved in your thinking. The Swami has just overwhelmed us with information here. So is there anything you'd like to ask or say about what's been read so far this evening? So everyone feels like they have a sufficient grasp of this?
I was just about to say that I mean, I hear everything, but it seems like a lot of kind of leading up to something, I guess, is what it feels like. I'm not sure what to make of it. I guess I think I understand there's a difference between, you know, the real man, the Atman, and this self that I think I am, I guess, but I'm not really sure how to tie it all together. What's the significance of that?
Very, very good. Thank you for bringing that up, because this points to what must happen after we hear something. This is the Shravana. This is the hearing it. Now, what we need to do exactly what you said, to make something of this, we have to take it within ourselves and say, this is the reality as presented to me by Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda I can take seriously. I don't think he's blowing smoke at me. But it's very different from the way I think and live, because all of us have this gross body and this subtle body, this mind, and we're very involved in it. We can say even entangled with it. So the word in Sanskrit for what happens next is manana. We take this into our mind and we compare what the Swami has said with what we actually believe. And what we actually believe is represented by the way we normally talk and the way we normally behave. That's our character. That's the way we are at the moment. So all of this that the Swami has said, and of course one reading won't do it. We need to go back and read it again if we're seriously going to do some manana, and inspect each of the points, because all of us behave as if the body is the reality. The body and the mind are the reality. And that's because the left mind is predominant. We're constantly thinking in words and concepts, which is the language of the left mind. These subtle things that the Swami is talking about beyond time, space, and causation are a reality of the right mind or of the heart. We don't normally engage with that because of our practicality, our need to be dealing with a practical world that has been created and shaped by the left mind. So we're constantly engaged with that. That's why we need to then do the manana, take these ideas in and compare them and contrast them with the way we normally think, speak, and behave, particularly the way we normally speak and behave. What do I say? What do I say as I go through the day to myself and to others? What does that represent in terms of the reality that I'm living, the reality I'm being? And how do I actually act? Because if you do take these ideas in and begin to move and speak and act from there, there will be a difference. I'm really glad you surfaced that and the way you did. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
It's sort of like a follow-up question. Also, you had mentioned something in the Raj Yoga talk on Sunday. So when one becomes successful in the meditation, I think you said that in the deep parts of meditation, you can actually see the cause and thereby stop the effect.
Yes.
What does that mean, like seeing the cause? Is that something that can be explained or only can be experienced?
Would you say the last part of that again?
So what exactly is meant by seeing the cause? Is that something that can be seen or experienced in?
Well, the two things are the same, aren't they? To see something is to experience it. And each of us it'll happen for us in our own unique way. But as anyone who practices therapy or psychological counseling will tell you, there are frameworks for how people normally think. When we go below our normal thought processes into our active subconscious, we then see the effects forming and how those effects forming in this subtle way, drive our actual thoughts, speech, and actions in our waking awareness. When we have become sufficiently practiced at meditation, we sink below the seeing the effects being caused, and we begin to see what it is in us that, and by see I mean experience, those things that are giving rise to the effects. Why is it that I am so sensitive to criticism? That's the effect, that's sensitivity to criticism and the reaction that comes. Swami Vivekananda asked himself that question. So then when we sink into the latent subconscious, we see, oh, there is the cause. There is the cause for this effect. We see what happened to us. And it may not even be something of this lifetime. We can't tell.
So by seeing that, I mean, let's just say we see that and we experience that. Then what are we to do?
Well, then because you know what it is that is producing the effect of this sensitivity to criticism, you can say, is this a reality in my life now? Or is this just a pair of glasses that I'm wearing that are tinted with this sensitivity? And we also get a sense of what Swami Prabhavananda, not Swami Prabhavananda, Swami Prabhavananda repeated it, but what Swami Vivekananda meant when he said, praiser praised and blamer blamed are one. Behind the appearance is the oneness. Behind the appearance of manyness is the oneness. Praiser praised, blamer blamed are one. So each of us will have our own, what we see. Then we can say, is this still a reality for us? Is this still a reality for me? This thing that happened that is embedded in this mental impression, this samskara that I have, or series of samskaras that are all around a particular issue, like being sensitive to criticism. Is this still existing in my life now? Or is this something I'm projecting out from that was an experience in my past? And as you go further, it becomes more and more subtle until you begin to understand why it is you once again took human form. What it is that you were seeking, what it was that remained unfulfilled that caused you to take human form again. And this is the cause of your birth. And when you ascertain the cause of your birth, then you can say, you can use all the knowledge that is available to you in those moments to say, I don't need to do this anymore. It wasn't that it was a mistake, that you were wrong to do it. No. But there was something that you still felt was that you lacked. And so we then get to what it is in us that we that we somehow still believe we lack. And then having experienced ourselves as, which also is something that happens in the deeper experience of meditation, we see I am not all of these causes and effects. I am what the Swami just was describing. That is who I truly am. And in the beginning, it's kind of a spontaneous re-identification with yourself because it's so comfortable. It's so comfortable to think of yourself as that living presence that you experience. That is beyond time, space, and causation. Thank you, Swayam, for asking it that way.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Does everyone grasp what was said? Is there anything more?
Can I make a comment to Brother Shankara?
Of course, I'm.
You just said it really nice. And most often we experience the effect and act on it. We experience the effect and act on it, but we don't look at the causes.
Exactly.
The lack of our equanimity and forbearance, which takes time through meditation and all this, then we can see, oh my God, that's the reason I'm really getting angry. Is it really worth getting angry? Then we start questioning ourselves and we just release it. We release it.
Yes, and you said the magic words. Is it worth it? Does it deserve my attention?
Exactly. Do I want to waste my energy for this? Do I want to really use my energy on this particular thing, this particular person, whatever it is that is making you angry or people who are critical about you? That just then the meditation kind of leads you to that path, the questioning path, and the equanimity and forbearance. Or a therapy or something, therapist can do that to a client by slow working with the person. That's where we get there. Then they start getting more insight and more of everything. Then
And we don't have to seek these insights.
exactly,
All we have to do is practice the meditation.
you are
And
100%.
as we sink beneath the level of our waking awareness, our
Yes,
chatterbox left mind,
that's true.
and into the realm of the right mind and the heart,
That's very
we
true.
see from there quite spontaneously.
Sure, that's
We
exactly.
don't have to, it's not a matter of ratiocination. It's not a matter of thinking about
That's
it. It's just apparent to us.
it's very
And again, I cannot recommend highly enough the book My Stroke of Insight by
yeah.
Jill
I have
Bolte Taylor.
read that. Oh my God, it just blows your mind away. I've been doing that.
Because she because of this massive hemorrhage in her left mind, left brain, massive stroke, big as a golf ball, uh, um, was there that had to be removed.
Yeah.
When she regained her left mind awareness, slowly and slowly, over 8 years, she came from, she was by this stroke forced into what we would call a meditative state, her right mind awareness.
That's right.
And re-emerging from it, she rediscovered the causes and their effects. And she called them neural loops, which is a really wonderful English translation of the word samskara, though she didn't intend it that way. A samskara is a neural loop. You touch it and it goes bzzzt and does its thing. So the gunas will brush against these samskaras, this set of samskaras that are around some particular habit pattern that you have. For a time, I had the habit pattern of seriously overeating. This was years ago, but nevertheless, there it was. And so it was through this work that you, where you begin to see, oh, this is what I'm trying to do by overeating.
Yes, agree with you.
But in the meantime, the samskaras, these neural loops, they get touched and they produce their effect. And so Jill Bolte Taylor, the author of that book, learned to restrain those neural loops. She saw the causes,
Yes.
she saw the effects, and she learned to restrain them. And so she became a very, very different person than the woman who had the stroke.
Thank you so much.
Each of us can do exactly the same thing. And it's illuminating to see that it took her 8 years of hard, patient work. After having made the decision to leave this very comfortable realm of the right mind, she was very happy there.
That's true. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Harma.
Shankara,
Yes, dear.
Go
I
ahead.
would like to ask a question about Brahman
Yes,
and Atman,
yes.
because I don't quite understand that at all.
Well,
I mean, I think I understood Atman, but then you brought Brahman in and I got confused.
we're all confused about Brahman. There's no way not to be confused about Brahman, because confusion is a thing of the mind and of the intellect. There is nothing that can really be said about Brahman. Brahman is that from which all arose. Brahman is all potential. It's said Brahman does not exist. Brahman is existence itself. Brahman does not know. Brahman is knowledge itself. Brahman is not blissful or loving. Brahman is bliss or love itself. So we can, with our left mind, we can think, okay, anything that partakes of existence, since Brahman is existence itself, anything that partakes of existence is therefore, as they say in Latin, ipso facto, Brahman, that is Brahman. Anything that can be known, since Brahman is knowledge itself, that is Brahman. Any bliss that we feel or love that we feel, that is Brahman. But we can't point to Brahman. We can't even point to it like pointing at the moon. So that's why this idea of Atman came. Atman is somehow this motive force, this manifestation machine, manifestation capability, that which takes from potential to manifestation through time, space, and causation. That is Atman. And that's why I said there's Brahman, which is beyond the beyond gunas. The gunas are the instruments of the powers of the divine feminine to create manifestation. But Atman, which is, so to speak, a child of that divine manifestation, it does have purposes. and it does have experiences. So though it is not within time, space, and causation, and is not changed by these things, remains omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, it does somehow have purposes. Krishna describes this in chapter 5 of the Gita. And it also has experience. It experiences what it has created. So there's no way of intellectually understanding Brahman. We can form some idea of Atman, which has been what has just been being said. But even that won't hold. It won't, it's not a construct like the laws of thermodynamics, or the fact that the speed of light is such and such. It won't hold because it's beyond limitation. And so our finite mind cannot ever really hold. So when you say you're confused, Beverly, yes, we're all confused if we're honest with ourselves about these things. And that's why Swami Vivekananda, spoke 6,400 and some odd words, trying to help us get some grip on this. I forget what the number of words is. 6,492 words in chapter 2 of Jnana Yoga. That's a lot of words.
Yes.
So he's
It
trying.
seems to me, this is going to sound very strange, but it seems to me that in Catholicism, God the Father and Jesus the Son, if you take it to its metaphysical concepts, you get a little closer. God is unknowable, and Jesus comes into manifestation so that you get an inkling.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so would you say that that's kind of Atman is kind of like Jesus in that state of manifestation that points to the unknowable, the Atman?
The difficulty there is that the Atman does not itself manifest. That which I mentioned the word Ishvara before, or Ishwari, feminine, divine, masculine. They aren't really gendered, but we think of them that way. That's God the Father, and the incarnations, Jesus is one, Buddha another, Sri Ramakrishna another, if you believe that. These are the Word made flesh, as is said in the Gospel of John. And so they take on our limitation in order to manifest to us the attributes of Atman, Saguna Brahman with attributes. And so Jesus was manifestation. But what did he say of himself and those that were, he said, I am the vine, ye are the branches. So we're never separate. We're never separate. This is where the Swami first started by saying, you have an Atman, I have an Atman. And then he said, but that's not really true. Behind that idea is the reality. And if you read the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus also speaks that way. If you lift a rock, I am there. If you split a log of wood, I am there. I am everywhere. I am omnipresent. So our fundamental delusion is that we are separate from the reality, capital R, and that we are doing this. Now, there's no way for us not to believe that at some point. No way.
I know.
So then we do what I spoke of earlier. We take these ideas, these higher ideas, into our mind, and we compare the way we think, act, and speak, so that I should say that differently, the way we think, speak, and act, and say, what does that betray about what I really believe? Now, here are these other ideas. And through this process of comparing and contrasting, which is called manana, taking it into the mind, and then through the practice of meditation, becoming aware of these deeper realities, then it becomes something more to us than words on a page or words spoken in an evening like this. It becomes, and as I said, it's spontaneous, because you are uncovering by setting aside the way that you have thought, the way you have thought, spoken, and acted. As you slowly and slowly set those aside, then that which is the more profound reality makes itself known spontaneously. Thank you for being so honest, Beverly, about that, for being so straightforward.
Well, it just, well, thank you.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I hope I'm not digressing, but I have a question again about this cause and effect thing. So the identification of the cause for an effect, for example, the emotions we described, sensitivity, anger, or fear, or whatever, during meditation, is that different from what sometimes we do during waking awareness by reflecting or cogitating, or say in therapy? I mean, what's the difference between these three processes?
When we discover them through manana or through therapy, because the therapist helps us understand something that we haven't seen, that is producing the effects that they start out as ideas to us. So it's absolutely imperative to do the manana, to begin to change your ideas. But the reality of the truth of these only comes to us as we sink below the level of waking awareness and into the active subconscious, where we can see the effects forming. How do we see them? They interrupt our attempts at meditation. They interrupt our attempts at concentration. We're repeating our mantra, we're doing our visualization, we're watching our breath, whatever it is we're doing as a form of meditation. And that focus is there, it's there, it's there, it's there, and then something comes along. And before we know it, we've followed that, we call it a train of thought. In Sanskrit, vasana, a series of things related to one another that lead to a way of thinking and being. We're following that. And then, if we're sincere practitioners, we'll catch ourselves, but we will notice what it is that took us away from our concentration, our practice of meditation. And so slowly and slowly, we come to a very fine understanding of those things that are most compelling, that interrupt us. And that's why I say, slowly and slowly, you will discern what it is that actually caused you to take this birth. Because you'll see the causes of that impelled this effect of this birth. You will see what it is that you felt you lacked, what remained unfulfilled. So does that clarify it, Swayam, or is there more?
No, I think it clarified it. Thank you.
I do have one follow-up to that, though.
Yes, please.
How do you know you're not making false perceptions or having false perceptions? How do you come to know that?
Well, first of all, let me sort of suggest you read chapter 2 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras about what is the nature of false perceptions. When you are in the state of a concentration and meditation, and you're interrupted, inherently, that which interrupts you is a lower form of truth. Therefore, it has a certain falseness to it, yes. But when it repeats itself over and over, weeks, months, years go by, and still this same train of thought will want to insist on itself. You don't doubt its reality. But, as I said, please read chapter 2 and you can find it in Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga or Swami Prabhavananda's book, How to Know God, which is his translation and commentary on the Yoga Sutras, which was written for the modern mind. Swami Vivekananda wrote Raja Yoga for the just beginning to be post-Victorian mind. And so it's a little hard for us to grasp sometimes. So Swami Prabhavananda in the 1940s or early 50s, I've forgotten exactly when, wrote the book How to Know God. And he very carefully and very exactly gives us Patanjali's definition of what is false and what is true. And we can then compare that with how our mind seems to be working.
Thank you for the suggested reading.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. And also the practice of meditation over years. And I say the practice of meditation because most of us, including myself, don't really meditate much. You know? We practice meditating, but as we learn so much by what it is that interrupts us from meditating. We learn so much about the causes, and that's one of the great reasons to do it. Is we learn the contents. First, we learn the contents of our waking awareness. Then we learn the contents of our active subconscious. And sometime later, we learn the contents of our latent subconscious, where these samskaras actually reside, that are producing the effects in our, the subtle effects in our active subconscious that then produce the actual effects in our waking awareness, our thoughts, our speech, our actions. But it's good to have this, to question yourself, you know. But keep practicing, and certitude comes. Certainty comes. And you really begin to identify these things that are interrupting you as a lower form of truth. As Vivekananda says, we do not move from error to truth. We move, if you will, from lower truth to higher truth. The manifest world is not untrue. We may have distorted perceptions of it that make it even less true. But nevertheless, it is a form of truth. It is the divine in manifestation. It is Saguna Brahman. And Sri Ramakrishna is very explicit about this. It's not untrue. It's just a lower form of truth. And as he says, once you reach the roof, and you've come up the steps one by one by one, and you reach the roof and you see that the roof is made of brick, mortar, and lime dust, that then you see, oh yes, the steps were also made out of brick, mortar, and lime dust. And so the substance behind is the same. It's just it's in motion, in manifestation, and it's in perfect stillness and equilibrium in the unmanifest. But those are just words to say, perfect stillness and equilibrium. You know, you have to experience nirvikalpa samadhi, which is not even an experience. You have to be nirvikalpa samadhi to even know what those words mean. And Swami Prabhavananda used to say about two people who wanted to talk to him about nirvikalpa samadhi, he would say, achieve savikalpa samadhi, then we'll talk about nirvikalpa samadhi. What is savikalpa samadhi? Awareness, having the experience that there is only the divine presence and that you are part of it. That's savikalpa samadhi. Yes, please, Divya.
I was just, I have a lot of connecting points to all of these comments and questions. And I guess it starts with the relation of cause and effect, which seems to, I keep thinking of Swamiji's point that cause is but another, the effect is but another form of the cause.
Mm-hmm.
And that cause is effect, that there isn't a distinction between the two,
Yes, the cause is the latent effect.
the latent effect.
The effect is latent in the cause.
Yes. And I just think of like, I was thinking of like, how can I explain this? Like, and I just think of, say, like, we're always identifying the causes of certain wars. And, you know, say like World War I or World War II, and it's always desire. And I desire for things, desire for territory, desire for whatever resources, and desire. Then it makes me think about the question that was asked about, you know, how do we know whether this, what the causes that we identify to be the actual causes of how we behave, or problems we have with people, fights we have with people, and that just leads us, you know, arguing over and over again about something that we can never find the cause of.
Well,
And
when we argue, Divya, we're usually wasting time, almost always wasting time.
absolutely, but nevertheless, you see it so much around you.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, when you're trying to, I guess, even just catch yourself, or, you know, play a mediating role in a situation that has just spiraled, it's like the hardest part is, you know, just the part about desire is what clouds are. At least for me, it's like when I know it's certain feelings that I have that are keeping me from being honest with myself about what I perceive to be the reason.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't be honest about that, then it's like, and it goes back to, yeah, I, you know, when you pointed me to the chapter on pratyahara, sense perception, I think it really started there for me, with just, you know, how am I implicated through my senses in, um, you know, these emotions I feel.
Yes, there's we this is what it means to be entangled, to be bound, and are we all in that condition? Yes, no question. We wouldn't be here this evening if we weren't. We wouldn't be seeking in the way we're seeking if we weren't. But we are those, as Sri Ramakrishna pointed out in the gospel, we are those fish that are trying to get out of the net. We are not the fish that are burying ourselves in the mud and saying, oh, everything's all right, everything's all right. It doesn't matter if I feel uncomfortable about these thoughts that I'm having, or these feelings that I'm having, or these arguments that I'm having. I'll just make myself as comfortable as I can. And, you know, some of us get out of the net. And everyone who's with us tonight is a very strong candidate for, as the master said, jumping out of the net and making a big splash. And the fisherman said, there's a big one that got away.
I
So,
thought of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead yourself, dear.
I was just, when you said that, I thought of what Sri Ramakrishna said about Rakha, Swami Brahmananda. He said he has now become like the mudfish. He's in the mud, but the mud cannot touch him.
Yes.
And it's such a beautiful way of thinking about how to be in Prakriti, which is, you know, as you said, real. Well, not real, but it is a manifestation of the divine.
Well,
The apparent man, excuse me.
even Adi Shankaracharya admitted its reality. He just said it's a relative reality.
Relative, yeah.
It's a relative reality. Relative means what? Changing, constantly changing.
Mm.
It's not stable. But once we go beyond the relative reality, then, as the master points out, as Sri Ramakrishna points out, most people either they don't even come back to the body once they have that realization of the reality, or if they do, the body lasts a maximum of 21 days. But the fact is that life becomes ever more beautiful and ever more satisfactory as we walk this path. And we begin to see more and more clearly, more and more, and we begin to work more and more efficiently and effectively, not because we're saying, I'm going to work more efficiently and more effectively. No, simply those distractions, those things that keep us from working more efficiently and more effectively are less present to us. We know what deserves our attention. We're clearer and clearer about what deserves our attention. And so we focus it more easily and more continuously on those things that deserve our attention. And so life is more beautiful, life is more satisfactory, life is calmer, and we enjoy ourselves and other people much more. All of that is a truth.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
So, with continued practice of meditation, with continued practice, does it become easier to be a witness and let these causes just pass by rather than push back?
Ah, how beautifully said. Jesus's shortest teaching was, be passers-by. And so, yes, indeed, it becomes, we identify more and more with the witness, which is the face of the Atman. It's the aspect of the Atman that we can know intimately. It becomes the beloved, the witness, that which is experiencing. And so we identify more and more with that. And as we identify more and more with that, we take on the attributes of that. And one of them is not to get entangled, not to be reactive. And we become more deliberate in our actions. We become more decisive about what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do because of the experiences we've had in meditation, practicing meditation. Slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly. You know, Swami Sri Dharananda says, the process is a process of divinizing your life. Divinizing your life. We start off, he says, this is Swami Sri Dharananda. You can look him up online. Oh, if you do, you'll be so glad. Swami Sri Dharananda, he is in charge of the work in Australia and New Zealand now. He's in his 80s. Sri Dharananda, Sridharananda, Sri Dharananda. Swami Sri Dharananda says we start off quite legitimately saying, I am. We have this feeling, undeniably, I am. But then as we begin to mature as an ego, as a human being, we get a sense We get a sense of the divine. Devotion and awe, reverence dawns in us. And so we say, I am, and the divine is. And then we see, as we experience more and more the power of the divine, as opposed to our own power, and who's really in charge here, so to speak, we begin to say, the divine is, and I am. And the profound experience of this is Savikalpa Samadhi, where you experience that the divine is the reality. The divine presence is all pervasive. It pushes everything else to the periphery. But somehow you sense, I am a part. So that the divine presence is, and I am. And the final realization, Swami Sridharananda says, is that only the divine is. Only the divine presence is. I am a changing, well, in a sense, in the profoundest sense, I am not. We go from I am to I am not. But just that third phase where we say the divine presence is and I am, that's what we're striving for here now. And it is a wonderful, wonderful thing to be striving for it, and to know that based on the testimony of saint after saint after saint, including Swami Vivekananda, that will be achieved. And it doesn't have to be in another lifetime. With enough attention and learning to control our attention, it can happen in this lifetime. So anything else from anyone?
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you,
Time
Swam. You always give us such wonderful opportunities.
time may be a concept, but I wish we can stop it so we can keep these classes going forever.
Well, we've got a lot of Jnana Yoga to go, believe you me. You know, we're not even finished with chapter 2 yet. I forget how many chapters there are, but he delivered all these lectures in London in 1895. There's a lot yet left to go. We haven't even begun his disquisitions on Maya. There's his great, it's a masterwork, his talks on Maya, the relative reality. So anything else?
We've been,
Go ahead, Beverly.
okay. I just want to say that one teacher that I had suggested in terms of entanglements in meditation, to when a thought would arise about an experience that haunted me or bothered me, or people bothering me, visualize threads that tie you to that experience or that person, and then take that thread and send it lovingly back to that experience or that person. Untie it from yourself.
Uh-huh.
And in the meditation, send it lovingly, not judgmentally, back the way it came to you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And by the end of the meditation, you have this sense of calm and you have a sense of freedom
Yes,
and you have a sense of being alone.
yes.
And it is profoundly healing.
Beautifully said, Beverly. Thank you. What a good passing along of your instruction. How do we get to that place where we don't get entangled in the first place? Here's a beautiful example from the Buddha. As we know, the Buddha began to teach, and one of the things that happened was a lot of people were no longer going to the temple, no longer doing their temple relationship. And so one of the head priests of a temple in Varanasi came to the Buddha and was assailing him, saying, "You're destroying society. You're destroying the very fabric of society." And he went on and on and on. And the Buddha listened patiently. When the man had finished, the Buddha said, simply bowed to him, put his palms together and said, "Brother, I do not accept your gift." He did not react. He did not act in any way except to say, "Brother, I do not accept your gift." And if you can do this when people do what they do that wants to set off your alarm bells and set off that,
Push your buttons.
push your buttons. If you can do that, then, and if you can do it sincerely,
You can stay untangled.
yeah, exactly.
It's wonderful.
So there was somebody else who was going to talk at the same time Beverly was going to talk.
Yes, Brother Shankar. This is Katrina Collins.
Hello,
And-
Katrina.
Hi. Can you explain again the relationship between the subtle body and the Atman, and the subtle body and the gross body?
Well, there is in fact no relationship between the Atman and the bodies, both subtle and gross.
Okay.
The Atman and its purposes are the reason for the subtle body and the gross body's existence. But there's no entanglement. There's that relationship of purposefulness and experience. And the gross body and the subtle body, the gross body we understand very easily. Here it is. The subtle body is, it's said, that is what transmigrates from one body to another, reincarnation. It is made of the mind, the intellect, and the so-called causal body or bliss body. The Atman, of course, doesn't move, but its purposes may cause you to take another body. And so all of the mental impressions that are left with you at the death of this body transmigrate and surround the Atman. And so the subtle body surrounds the Atman and then begins to manifest the gross body, which we see that in the womb. So the gross body and the physical body, the gross body is the manifestation of the causes that are latent in the subtle body. As so-called mental impressions or samskaras, or neural loops, as Jill Bolte Taylor calls them. Thank you, Katrina. Did that answer the question?
Yes. So the Atman is free of all of that.
Absolutely, ever free,
Okay.
unbound.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
since
you.
that is the you of you, that you are also ever free and unbound.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But as we sit here right now, we have a subtle body, a bright body, and our gross body, and we are entangled. Otherwise, we wouldn't be trying to become unentangled. And that's fine. That's wonderful. That's glorious.
Yeah.
Nothing to be worried about or ashamed about, or there's something wrong. No, there's everything right. You know, this is I am blessed to be one of the chosen. As Jesus said, ye have not chosen me, I have chosen you. And so somehow, look at this screen full of people here on a Wednesday night. Look at this screen full of people reaching for something, reaching for that lifeline.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, dears? All right. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Hari Om Tat Sat. So, as we leave one another, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be cheerful. And Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. Go in the mother's loving and protective embrace. So, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, Shankara. Good night.
And Swayam, this
Yes.
will go on just about as long as you like.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Hari Om.
Good
Good night.
Good night and thank you all.
Good night, Beverly. So good to hear your voice.
So I just love this Wednesday night.
Good.
It is, it stretches your soul and your mind. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, Vivekananda will do that for us. There's no two ways
He
about it.
does.
Yes, he does. All right.
Anyway,
Good night,
I'll
dear.
see you Sunday.
Right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.